G'day guys, Sam here, aka Art and Vision. Let's get straight to it and talk about the big gaming news this month or this week, which is about the acquisition of Blizzard Activision by Microsoft. Now, there's a lot of chatter online about how this is going to affect the gaming community and how this is going to affect Sony and PlayStation. And look, I'm not here to really talk about the specifics behind whether Xbox is going to be superior to Sony, etc. What I wanted to do was analyze the business behind this acquisition a little more. Now, I've never worked in the gaming industry, but I have worked in the software industry for a long time. I run businesses in the software industry, so I understand a little bit about how businesses in the software industry are structured. And I'd love to just share some insights with you on this. Now, before we get kind of stuck into the detail, we want to talk about the two companies involved here, the two parent companies being Sony and Microsoft. And it's something we need to understand before we can dive into exactly the mechanics of this acquisition and like what it means for the gaming community. There are two primary differences between Sony and Microsoft. Sony is historically a electronics and consumer electronics manufacturer. Now, they have pivoted a lot in recent years towards media, film, and software, but they are primarily a hardware manufacturer, and they have been for a long time. Microsoft, on the other hand, have been primarily a software business. Yes, they both do hardware and they both do software, but they have a primary foothold in their respective industry, hardware and software. And I want you to think about that when we drive into having a think about what the acquisition means. Now, what does an acquisition of this size mean, and what is it about? Why does this happen in organizations? And not just this particular acquisition, but any acquisition of size. You've got to understand that this is always a long-term play. This is not about short-term changes, short-term gains. It is a long play purely to increase the profitability of the group of companies being acquired so that it increases the value for shareholders and executives. That is the reason why acquisitions occur, to increase the value of the companies. So you need to understand that this type of acquisition of this size, with so many studios and so many subordinate companies being acquired, is not a short-term play. So in the short term, I'm talking inside 5 years, even up to 10 years, nothing much is going to change. You even had sort of Phil Spencer come out today on Twitter and say that, Call of Duty, one of the biggest franchises that's acquired as part of this acquisition, is still going to remain on Sony. And then there's a lot of reasons why that makes sense, right? Like, why are you going to strip away one of the highest selling franchises on PlayStation just because you made this acquisition? You're not going to do that. Now, long term, it probably is going to be stripped away, and I'll explain a little bit why. So rest assured, in the short term, I don't think really much is going to happen. I think these game studios are going to come to release. They're going to still be pumping out great content, and it will probably be across multi-platform. You'll see these other releases. Maybe they'll go exclusive across to Microsoft to start with their Xbox, but maybe they'll come out on PlayStation a little bit later and other platforms. But ultimately, I think that most of this stuff is going to stay the same in the short term. This is a long-term play, greater than 10 years or more. So, what is the play here? Why are these acquisitions happening? And, a lot of people think, it's the console wars, it's, Xbox versus PlayStation. That has nothing to do with it. It's not about who can sell more consoles. The long-term play here is subscription revenue. That is the number one reason why Microsoft are acquiring such large amounts of the gaming market, and it is purely to build long-term subscription revenue base. Why? Why do businesses care about subscription revenue? So there's a couple of reasons why subscription revenue is so attractive to business. One, it's reliable and it's long-term revenue that is predictable. It's recurring month on month on month on month. So it creates stability in financial performance. It allows businesses to forecast better, having ongoing streams of revenue. If you think about the sale of a piece of hardware, like a console, like a PlayStation or an Xbox, it's lumpy revenue. There is a huge, massive swell of revenue to sell these devices when they are released. And, yes, they get sold regularly, but there is often a larger period of time where the uptake is the most. And that's where the bulk of the revenue is generated from the sale of those hardware devices. Subscription revenue happens ongoing. Now, one of the other big key factors about gaming subscription and why this is so important is it's a low barrier to entry. Now, you need to understand that ultimately this type of acquisition and these types of subscriptions, and more specifically the low barrier to entry to a subscription fee, is actually a lot more attractive for companies and consumers. Whether you like it or not, gaming in general is expensive, and buying a physical game as such on release, $100 for, say, an exclusive game that comes out on day one versus a $20 monthly subscription, you can increase your footprint of subscribers much faster than you can people purchasing games outright. It also creates sticky customers. If you have spent a number of months or even years on a subscription service and you have acquired many titles through that period, you're going to be less likely to let that subscription lapse and not renew because you don't have access to the games, and you might have to go and buy these games outright, which might be hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, depending on how many games you play under the subscription model. So subscription-based revenue is the way forward for these businesses. Now, let's explain and analyze the differences again between Sony and Microsoft. Microsoft have been making software for decades, and they understand the subscription model, and they have it working. They have it working in their business divisions across their Windows platforms and their Office platforms, and they've been doing that for years. So it's only natural that they're trying to bring that business model into their gaming market. They want more games that consumers want on these subscription services. So Xbox Game Pass becomes super attractive for the majority of gamers. This is the end game. This is the big play. Sony need to answer this. They need to answer in the long term. What are they going to do about hooking subscribers in to their platform? Another reason, and it might be a bit longer, is cloud gaming. Hardware, and gaming hardware especially, is likely to fade away. Yes, it might not in the next 10 years or so, but it will at some point. When the technology catches up to it, just as it's done with cloud computing, just as it's done with entertainment services, gaming will move to the cloud, and the hardware itself will become less profitable because consumers won't need hardware to play games. This is a race right now for which organization has the most attractive subscription service into the future. And that is what this acquisition is about. Now, is this bad for gamers? Maybe. I don't know. They're not thinking about it from the mindset of a gamer like you or I. They're thinking about this from shareholdings and profits and revenue. And subscription revenue is how they're going to increase the value of their shareholders for decades to come. That's my thoughts, guys. That's my thoughts on this acquisition and why it's so important, and probably some of my business understanding coming in to kind of analyze like why such a thing is happening. I'd be really interested to see what you think about it, and I'm really interested to see if Sony does something about this in the future. I think it really needs to happen. So guys, thanks for watching. Chat soon.